Hajimemashite. I've been trying to visualize and identify a couple of questions on... I go back and forth from Facebook and YouTube because I think they're both somewhat kind of connected. I am kind of moving my discussions towards music on Facebook as well, besides obviously having discussions here. And trying to like work on music and stuff with you guys. But I think something that's been on my mind is music. You know, music production is interesting because before the producers who are now producers, I mean, there are lots of producers out there in the world, right? Before they became producers, I'm sure they had some connection with vinyls and DJing and sound and understanding techniques. Obviously, a lot of them who are producers have actually gotten educated through, you know, understanding music theories, but you need to have the music theory behind some of this stuff or else it's going to be a little bit hard to understand. It's a bit of a walkthrough on music history during the time of the raves, because raving was my world. When I was growing up, that was where we met a lot of the celebrity musicians and producers and stuff in the world of music. And it was a little bit more easier to meet people who are now, you know, way at the top of their fields and industries through those spaces, because it was kind of like a place to unite people with DJing. But the DJing was not the DJing that you have now. The DJing actually dealt with vinyls, and the decks were like a little bit more, they were older. The versions of technology was not the same as it is now. Now they've made things a lot easier. As we know, like everything is a lot easier now. Even coming up with a beat, you can just press your button down and come up with a beat, and it's kind of like recreated the loops. Back then you actually had to do the work and kind of, if you were going to take music from a cassette tape, we had cassette tapes, we did not have CDs. I mean, we had CDs later on, but during the 80s and 90s, cassette tapes were what we were working with. Now, I wasn't personally a DJ. My husband is a DJ. He apparently DJ'd in New York and stuff back in the day. So, to my surprise, I'm actually living with somebody who's actually done this stuff in places. So I think today's going to be like dedicated to people who like the old school generation. You know, I'm a little bit older than most people would think. I'm not in my 20s. I'm not in my 30s. I'm more in my 40s. And the importance of understanding, yeah, that world. So I grew up with, when I had gone to clubs back in the day, grown up with people like Boy George, Paul Oakenfold. Tricky was around. Tricky has a little bit more like you know, Billie Eilish. I keep thinking of Billie Eilish and I'm thinking, my goodness, she actually sounds, her songs are very tricky. So she's like the new Tricky of this era, just a female version of Tricky. That's what I see as Billie Eilish. So I identify the new generation of music sounds with some of the older generations. Madonna's been around forever. She's been in the scene forever, so she's the queen of the queens, and so was Janet Jackson. I keep going back to them because they have surpassed the test of time. They've gone straight through history into our present day. So it's amazing. Then you have people like Diesel Boy, Carl Cox. I'm just naming a couple of them. I think I might even do more of a list and go in depth into what they did specifically. So I'm just giving you an underlying kind of description of the history. And a lot of the stuff that you hear me kind of doing in the background of some of the tracks on the actual videos, I still have a very techie sound. Like I used to like my drum and bass. I was very big into drum and bass. Probably because I played a little bit of drums back in the day and I thought that this is the way to go for me. I would like to eventually produce perhaps possible drum and bass eventually. So that would be like the direction. I have also a very East Asian or Asian kind of approach to music as well because I lived in Japan and Indonesia. So I like the percussion and traditional type of sounds, which is kind of cool. So there's that part. I feel like the rave scene, even though it's undiscussed era. I mean, everybody talks about Burning Man now, right? Burning Man is like the new era. The clubs were mainly warehouses that people would kind of like celebrate in. I'm not gonna pull out pictures. I'm a little skeptical of getting copyright problems. The same applies to music. But if you guys want to look up some of the people, I will start writing a list down for the next video. Because this is the group of people, this is the era that, you know, they were experimenting with sounds that we were the experimentals. We were the ones that kind of said, okay, well, what if we tried this? How would this work out? And what if we put that together? How would that work out? So it was like the era of the introduction to what we now know as production, like the home production studio space, right? So portable studio space, and obviously the studio space I have in there, which is like the home stable. It's not a huge studio. It's kind of, it's a smallish space, small studio, home studio. Into the world of portability, because don't forget, portability, DJs had to be portable. They had to carry all those vinyls around with them and their decks. So that became like a portable, I see that as a portable studio space type of thing. And yeah, there are many, many facets to that world between the 90s and 80s, 90s to the early 2000s. So this is a little bit of history that, you know, people want to know about, you know, production. Say, for instance, you do want to learn about production, but there is history behind the production. Like I spoke about at the beginning of my first video, I think I brought up the introduction where DAWs came in. What were DAWs? And that's another question. Just remind me, please write down below what you think a DAW is. And then you have, you know, all these DJs who were DJs back then have now shifted into production. So there is that shift between DJing and production kind of format. Some people still remain to be DJs, but I think a lot of people shifted into production because it becomes a lifestyle, right? You don't have to just go out to DJ. You can now be inside and produce your own tracks and actually upload them onto the computer and create albums and work with people and manage and direct them. So there's that element too, which is important. But it's a lot easier to have your own little studio space than to be slogging a whole production vinyl collection around that one would have back in the day. So my husband's was apparently stolen in New York, so he hasn't had his collection of vinyls, which were 8 boxes full of vinyls, which I almost had a heart attack. I was like, oh my God, all of your vinyls are gone. Gone, gone, gone. He says, yeah, gone like the wind. So it's, yeah, I think he also enjoys this development of production equipment because it's part of him too. He even, you know, and people always say, well, I don't know if DJing is DJing, that's another question. Is DJing a musical skill? You know, it kind of goes both ways. I think the good DJs are, and probably have had musical training of some sort, but they're also techies. They understand the technical side because back in the day, like there was no such thing as, I mean, you probably could have gone to a school, but there was no school to teach you how to DJ. You literally would sit down and assess and figure out, and you would create your own kind of like thing. And if you had a good ear, say you might not be playing another instrument, but if you had a good ear, you could pick up where the changing of songs would be, and that's how you transition from the songs that you might enjoy into the songs that are kind of molded together. I may consider getting eventually a deck. It might be a new version. We certainly don't have vinyls anymore, but we have, you know, we have songs and tracks that we could probably use that Brandon has collected. So we've now moved into a different world of technology, and that's where everybody is right now, is they're creating music from songs that they're able to pull out of the internet. Maybe, I don't know. You can download some of them you cannot. And then transfer it into like softwares. I think I saw something on your phone where it actually has an app where you can learn how to DJ. Even going into Logic, I'm sure this is an introduction into DJing too. This is like a whole setup to get you started to understanding that process. This, I'm sure, could be used in like a place where you DJ. I'm almost certain of it. There's no question about it. And so I'm just showing you two variations of a setup today, just to reconfirm it. And the headphones that I had on just now, even though they're mainly for video games, those were the other ones with the ears. I like them because if I'm editing anything, for instance, on the more portable setup and I need silence, those actually work. So you can have the Bluetooth version of the headphones, and you can find them without the ears. I mean, it's not impossible, but you would need, I probably need more updated stuff, but you'd probably need something more like this that's connected, because there's like a whole process you need to do to make sure they're connected to the speakers as well. I had to put this back. We actually have a MIDI that's coming. We just don't have it right now. The Rhodes wasn't working because that was another problem. It turned out that the Rhodes was in fact podcasting, so they didn't have all the channels that I needed to actually plug all the cables in, which is sort of an important part of production and music. Yeah, I mean, if I can't plug in a microphone, for instance, and only be able to use a USB plug, then that would have been a problem for a proper microphone like we have over here. That mic that you see over there is fantastic. Very good. I'm still in the process of finishing this track. It's driving me crazy, but to finish, I really do want to get this onto Spotify. What I am going to do is talk about, the discussion is about how all the older DJs are now becoming the producers. So they're the ones with the technical skills. They're the ones that really understand what's going on. I sort of missed the boat in that, where I was kind of more into listening to the music in like the clubs, for instance, rather than actually being the musician, but I was definitely inspired by all those musicians during that time. I think it was because I was in college studying art during the time of the rave scene, I suppose. And I think it is important to talk about the rave scene because that was the introduction into really, 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 really good DJs. Like, it's a different standard, a different level. The older generation obviously have moved into more advanced stuff, whereas the new generation is still learning introduction of how things are created and how to set up and what works and where it's going to develop and all that stuff. And I myself do not have any kids of my own. I have my fur baby, which is my fur baby. So at this time, I do not have any children. So I feel as if it's important to talk about this kind of stuff with the next generation to come. And that's where I am right now. So I'm just showing you two examples of what the space will look like. In the next video, or the next discussion, I will have more of an in-depth talk about individual like DJs and producers and musicians during that era. I mean, yeah. Faithless was another good group. If you guys want a list, these are just the tip of the iceberg. BT, tip of the iceberg. These are the people I used to listen to. Hooverphonics. I don't know if anybody remembers Hooverphonics. During the 90s, I felt like they were like the introduction into what has now become very high-tech music. I think they were at that beginning phase of kind of exploring, experimenting, just like Ryuichi Sakamoto. They were the equivalent for what was going on here in the States. Or I think it was Europe or the States, whichever they're from. I can't remember exactly. One of the places. So that's basically where I am right now. As I said, I'm a little skeptical about the copyright claims on YouTube where I play somebody's music and then all of a sudden it gets banned. The video can get banned for having somebody else's music. So I'm sort of taking you guys through kind of like eclectic experiences through songs we can kind of create together on this in this platform, mainly because I really don't want to get flagged. So I'm trying very hard to kind of stay between the YouTube boundaries and what I'm capable of doing. So that's basically, I feel we're going to move into more production, more producers, more people that are out there, but are, you know, I think it should be out in the public. I think, and there are lots of producers on the computer, like on YouTube. There are many producers, but you know, how many are really talking about the history behind it? I like history. I'm a researcher. I like to research things. And this is why I think sometimes it's important to talk about different things. Like the other day I spoke about hip hop, and at the beginning I was speaking about classical, and then the introduction into the 80s and 90s through Japan's producer, composer, Ryuichi Sakamoto. So Ryuichi, I think it's Ryuichi Sakamoto. Obviously living in Japan myself. So that was like, that's the whole thing. So, you know, I'll go into this later on, but yeah, I had to plug that back in. Plug this baby back in because the other one was just not working. So I will now go back and forth between this is a good setup for, you know, if you want to sit down in a different space, and it does need to be quiet. I'm not going to lie. I do feel as if you're going to go on vacation, for instance, this is something you probably want to consider. Or if you're on the road, for instance, and you probably want to plug these into versions of DJ decks. I just don't have that stuff yet. I have to build up slowly, like everybody. I don't come with a load of money. So I have to be frugal or be wise about where I'm going to place, you know, make it happen. But my ultimate goal is to have a proper, you know, like a setup where you have all the other bits and pieces, and I need to learn a little bit more about this Logic Pro on the iPad, because the way it feels is definitely you're using your hands more versus the computer where you're actually using a mouse. So yeah, I think this would definitely also translate. You could probably get a DJ app on here. I should check it out. But the iPad could be used for that purpose, is to explore different sounds and mixes and all the stuff you can do. There probably are apps. I will take a look next time. And if anybody's interested, I will talk more about how to do that. I would like to learn with you guys at the same time. Said, this kind of setup would be like the portable setup. In the box, obviously, you have the microphone. And I have a pop shield for that and a stand where you can sit. But I always recommend standing for vocal parts. I do probably even recommend having a studio setup for the vocal section, because I don't think moving around with a microphone is going to help anybody's voice. I think it's just going to make it sound muffled and a little, yeah, it's not going to sound clean. You want to have a setup where you're going to sit or stand in one spot, and you're going to start putting the vocals down. That's what I have to do for this track next. I'm hoping to get everything done. It is a lot of work because I am working by myself at the moment. Eventually, I do want to kind of pull this out into a larger spectrum. I think once the channel starts building up, I think that would be the next phase. Okay, so the next video will be more on individual DJs, and I will get the list together for everybody. And if you are interested in the old school generation of musicians, I should probably ask more people about who ended up becoming like producers out of the DJs that were there back in the day. I think almost all of them became producers. I wouldn't be surprised, because if they know how to make something out of like things that were basically non-existent during the time, and yeah, the 80s was, you know, figure it out for yourself, learn how to do it on your own. You have no help. You had to do these kind of things on your own. You don't have, back then things were not that easy. We didn't have things like YouTube. We couldn't just go into the internet because there was no such thing as an internet either. So we really had to like figure it out for ourselves, literally. So that was my era. I come from that generation. So that's basically where I am right now. please talk to me. Like, tell me what your thoughts are. Give me your perspective. It's like I want to walk you guys through information as well as music. So let's have a discussion. I'm having a discussion on Facebook now. Everybody's into the discussions. You guys should join in on the discussions. Come join me on Facebook and we can talk more about like your opinions and thoughts on music. I'd very much like you guys to join me there. I would love it, actually. It would be fantastic. So I'm trying to interlock the two together, which would be wonderful. So that's where I am right now. And please like and subscribe. I really hope you guys are enjoying watching even some of the weird beginning videos that I've done. But we're advancing. You guys are watching me grow and advance this into something a little bit larger than it was. I thoroughly enjoy doing this because you can see I could talk for hours, right? I can have a discussion on music and do the research for everybody. I love it. I love it. And as a master's, somebody that did my master's, the main thing was for me to have open discussions on research and art. So I would have to research an artist and I'd have to have a discussion on that particular artist in front of the class. So this discussion type of thing is sort of normal for me. I wouldn't, yeah, it's a stand-up presentation, which is great. So utilizing the music side of things. So I'm enjoying this, guys. I really am. So please like and subscribe. I've shown you two variations. My little setup, the mini setup, and then also the larger setup. And I still, once I have the new MIDI or the audio input, it could be called either a MIDI or an audio input. MIDI or audio input, it's the same type of thing basically. Then I'll be able to do a little bit more with this. But right now I'm stuck here until we get that other piece together, which is happening shortly. Once again, arigatou gozaimashita. Matashita sayonara. Jane bye-bye. And yeah, what I'm saying at the end is thank you very much. Thanks for coming. I'll see you later. And goodbye, all in Japanese. Very quick, very kind of like brief discussion there. And I hope to see you guys in the next one. I will be talking more about DJs because I know that this is like another thing that everybody is into. So the new generation, yeah, the old generation is basically giving me the go-ahead to have a discussion on it. So I am now opening up the doors for discussion of DJs and how production played a role in the DJ world.